0. Hi, everybody. Welcome to day 4 of the Global Hope Conference. Today, we have from India, Mr. Ankit Kashyap. He is going to be talking about police behavior and conduct. Turn it over to you. Go ahead.
First of all, good evening to everyone present here. My name is Ankit Kashyap, and I would like to thank Prerna Foundation for giving me this opportunity to present my research paper on the topic police, its behavior and conduct. So I'm not getting the feature of sharing my PPT, sir. Can you just disable it?
There you go. You should have host capabilities now.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Yes. So yeah, and also I would like to thank Global Hope Conference as well. And before going to the presentation part, I would like myself to explain why I've taken this topic as my research paper. First of all, in the present scenario, where there has been a time where world has been facing a lot of downfall in terms of every aspect, but the only peoples that we look upon are the healthcare fraternity and the armed forces. But along with the respect that we have for them, we also have a fear among us. And the fear among us is created due to us knowing that there will be one or two or some of the fraternity people breaking protocols in the society, which in turn will create, misconducts of power. Before analyzing and understanding the misconducts of power, we should try to understand what police functions and its role on the society. Um, so before me trying to explain what is police conduct and its role and function in the society, I'd like you to explain what do we mean by police. Um, Police is something like it's a constitute body of person empowered by a state with an aim to enforce the law to ensure the safety and health of position of citizens and to prevent crime and civil disorder. The lawful powers includes arrest and the use of force legitimized by the state via the monopoly of violence. The term is mostly commonly associated with the police force of a sovereign state that are authorized to exercise police power of the state within a definite legal or territorial area of responsibility. You know, uh, Police force are mostly defined as being separate from the military, and other organizations involved in the defense of the states are, categorized as military powers. However, there are some units within the military uh, powers which can be charged with civil policing as well. Mostly the police forces are usually public sector service that is funded through taxes. Um, Law enforcement is only part of policing activity. Like policing has including an series of activities in different situations, but the predominant ones are concerned with the preservation of order. Like a police force may be referred to as police department, police service, constable, crime prevention, protective service, and etc. in different types in different parts of the world. So after learning what do we mean by police force or police, I like myself to explain uh, how how the concept of police force came into being. Came like how the concept of police force were created. So the first centrally organized police force was created by the government of King Louis XVI in 1667 to police the city of Paris. It was the largest city in the Europe at that time. The royal edict registered by the Parliament of Paris on March 15, 1667 created the office of Lieutenant General de Police, who was the head of the new Paris police force. And it was defined the task of the police as ensuring the peace and quiet of the public and private individual, as it was in that time. Uh, they were after French Revolution, Napoleon one reorganized the whole police system in the Paris and other cities with more than 5,000 inhabitants on February 17 and 1880 as the um, as the government decree created the first uniform police in French known as the city sergeants. And along with French, there were also other kingdoms which had an initial police force came into being. There were law enforcement systems existed in the various kingdoms and empires of ancient India. There were like in India, there were Dharma Sutras prescribes that kings should appoint officers and subordinated in the towns and villages to protect the subject from crime. So various inscription and literature from ancient India suggested that a variety of roles existed for the law enforcement official, such as that thief catcher, watchman, detective, and all. So after understanding how the initial theory of police force was created, we might think that the modern policing that is in today's present time is totally different from the initial theory of police force. So there was a development of modern policing was happened in the late 18th century and in the early 19th century. So the philosopher and sociologist like Jeremy Bentham, and there was Sir Robert Peel, who was a minister of parliament who served as Home Secretary of the United Kingdom in 1820s. So in 1829, Mr. Sir Peel established the Metropolitan Police Service in London. So with the founding of London Police Force, Peel became widely regarded as regarded by historians as he was the father of the modern policing. So basically, in British police officers are still known as Bobbies in honor of his first name. So then there was the first professional police force which was formed in the UK. It was funded by the local taxation, which was set up by Mr. Sir Pill itself. Then it was created to it was created to improve public law, and obviously the reforms were slow as there were distrust of the police. But by 17 or September of 1829, the first metropolitan police were patrolling the streets of London. There were 17 divisions which has 4 inspectors, 144 constables each. The force headquarters were Scotland Yard, and it answered to Home Security itself. Then the quality of officers were poor at that time. So of the first 2,800 new policemen, only 600 were eventually kept, they kept their jobs. And the first metropolitan policeman was sacked only after only after 4 hours of being employed. So the things eventually settled down, but despite rising crime levels, most countries retain that Paris constable instead of the police force that was created by Sir Pills. Then there was an act of Rural Constable Act of 1839, which allowed any of the 54 English countries to raise and equip a paid police force. So this act permits to appoint chief constables for the direction of optional, and saw the development of first constable and officers in the region. It also encouraged to hastily form their own police officers to explore, they like to avoid the high expense of being involved with country forces. But still in the 1840s, there were still disparities between different areas of the country with no single style of policing. So by 1840, only 180 out of 171 had 171 cities had police forces. So there was a new Paris Constable Act which was passed in response to political unrest associated with the movement. Then this whole concept of centralized and professional police force was tough. It was very tough with which was met with tremendous amount of resistance. The public fear that that a police force would essentially behave as another arm of the military. So as a result, there was an understandable reluctance to agree to be controlled by what was many assumed would be an occupying force. So to overcome this, opposition, Sir Phil is known for his laying down the framework of what police force should be comprised of and how a good police officer should conduct himself. So he started to develop a policy name called, pillion principle. Uh, Yes, the pillion principle. So the purpose of the police force was to prevent crime and maintain order. It was one of the principles. Then the police depends on the approval and trust of the public to effectively do their jobs. And the ultimate goal of policing is to achieve voluntary compliance with the law in the community. Then one of the principles where that the police must be unwearing in the duties and maintain impartiality and avoiding the temptation to be swayed by public opinion. So after all this principle laid, the Peels and his supporter took other measures to ensure that there was a clear distinction between a professional police officer and the military. So police wore blue uniforms in contrast to the bright red of the Royal Army forces. So they were forbidden to carry guns at that point of time, uh, uh, so that they maintain the police trust was impressed upon the members of the force. So with all this, there was evolution of police force also in the United States. Obviously, the concept of the modern policing force soon found its way to the United States. So it was not implemented exactly the same manner as it was in London, but over the next century, beyond the concept of policing evolved in the USA and also in the global manner. So after understanding how police force came into being, were created, and how the development of modern police happened, we can now understand how what is police conduct by the initial principles that were laid then. But still there will be a kind of difference to it. But what is, if we try to explain what is police conduct in present scenario, it will refer to appropriate conduct or any action taken by police force in connection with their official duty. So whenever there is an hour of need, danger, crisis, difficulty, when a citizen doesn't know what to do and whom to approach, the police station and a policeman happen to be the most appropriate and approachable unit for them. No, police are expectable to be accessible, interactive, dynamic organization of the society. So that's the reason we should understand what's the role and the function and duty they have towards the society. So it's also it's important for us to study the police conduct, as since it illustrates the whole fundamental conflict that arises from policing in democratic society. And now I'll try to explain the roles and function of the police police in the general basis. So the police, they uphold and enforce the law impartially and to protect life, liberty, property, human rights, and dignity of the members of the public. Uh, their role is to promote and preserve, public order. The role is to protect internal security, to prevent and control terrorist activities. Uh, they also they also have the role of having communal harmony. Then then they have to protect public properties, including roads, railways, bridges, vital installation and establishment, etc., against violence or any kind of attack. They have the role to prevent crimes, reduce the opportunity from the commission of crimes for their own perspective action, and also they have measures to aid and cooperate with other relevant agencies in implementing due to measures for prevention of crimes. Um, they also have they also have the role to create and maintain a feeling of security in the community, and as far as possible prevent conflicts and promote unity. Um, their role is to facilitate orderly movement of people and vehicle and control and regulate traffic on the roads and highways. They have the role to collect intelligence relating to matters affecting public peace, all kind of crimes, including social offenses, communalism, extremism, terrorism, and other matters relating to the national security. They also have the role to train, motive, and ensure welfare of the police personnel. Now, after understanding the role, the function of the police in the society, we come to the topic of police misconduct and the reality of the present. Obviously, when we go through the function of the police, we have to also understand that there is a large section within the police community which misuse the power, and which misuse the power and try to misconduct to gain personal profits and etc. So now I like myself to explain what exactly is police misconduct. Police misconducts occurs when while performing their official duties, as an officers conduct an individual constitutional rights or others commits an illegal act. So that is, if while they're performing official duties, if they violate any individual constitutional rights, or they commit you know any kind of illegal acts against individual, that will be considered as police misconduct. So with that, I like myself to explain what are the types of police misconduct. So there are false confession. So false confession is mostly confession done by police to make changes in the to make changes and make changes so that the convicts peoples are convicted easily. And there are false arrests. False arrest is mostly an arrest made with probable cause or warrant and without. And false arrest violates any individual court amendment constitutional right against unreasonable search. And then there is there is falsification of evidence. That means including offering false, fabricated evidence or preparing it. And it is characteristic by criminal intent to knowing presently or prepare false evidence in a legal proceeding. So then there is witness tampering. So it mostly occurs when a police attempts to cause a person to testify falsely, so without testimony or information. So So they pressurize the person absent from proceeding to which he or she has been summoned. So there are also racial, profiling. So basically, what happens is, racial profiling occurs when a police suspects or targets a person of a certain race on the basis of assumed characteristics or a behavior of a racial or ethnic group. Then there is unwarranted search and surveillance. So basically, what is that? It's the use of surveillance methods or technology to monitor the activity of individual or group of individual without the legal authority to do so. So there is also sexual misconduct. So it's mostly police officer that misuse the authority to inflict sexual harassment or assault or exploitation of the citizens that been has occurred by the police force. And after knowing the types of police misconduct, I like myself to give example of police misconduct that is happening in the globe. I'll cite just few example in accordance to what I've explained earlier, like what are the types. I'll try to link the example with the types of police misconduct. So the first example is the Philando case. It is one of the most famous police brutality case that came into being. So so basically, Mr. Philando Castle was driving in a car with his girlfriend and his girlfriend's daughter. So then he was pulled over by officer Jeremy Jack. Then what happened was, Mr. Castle immediately reported to the officer that he had a legal gun in his possession. So then, when he, then the next event which happened was, the police officer told not to reach for his gun. Then Castle replies that he was not going to reach for his gun, but he was going to reach for his ID to show to the police officers. Then, his girlfriend and the police body footage, then after the police thinking that he was reaching for his gun, the police shot him. And police shot him, and then uh, this was considered an excessive use of force, especially considering that there was an unarmed person and a child in the car, where Yanich fired 7 shots at a close range. Inspector Yanich was charged with manslaughter, and he was removed from his position as a police officer, and he had to pay a lot of damages to the girlfriend and his daughter. Then there was another example which happened was, it was the witnessing tampering of done by officer Anthony McDonald. So basically, when officer Anthony pulled over a driver in he spotted a large amount of cash in their car. So he decided to steal it. So when the driver reported the theft to the police department, so what officer Anthony did was, he tried to convince him to drop the charges by offering a bribe. So for committing a theft and attempting to tamper with the witness, officer Anthony was relieved of his duty, and was sentenced to 24 months in prison. Then uh, there's another example, like which happened in Chicago. It was of Rachel Jackson. So he witnessed a horrific car accident involving Chicago police officers. So what happened was, he bravely ran into the car and pulled one of the officer out, fearing that the vehicle was going to explode. When other officers arrived, Jackson was immediately detained and was questioned about seeing the officer's weapon and disarming a police officer. So then she went to the police for 10 months awaiting for trial. After which she was threatened and forced to sign a statement that the officers made. Then the case was dismissed by a judge, and Jackson turned around and sued the officers involving the involving the city for a false arrest and malicious prosecution. So after after citing the example of the misconduct, I'll like you to explain. Like myself to explain the statistics that is involved in the police misconduct, and if it is if it is the reality of the whole present scenario of the present time. So like statistics says that at least 85,000 law enforcement officers across the USA has been investigated or disciplined for misconduct over the past decade. And this investigation was done by USA Today network, and it was found out that US officers have beaten members of the public, planted evidence, used their badges to harass women. They have lied, they have stolen, dealt drugs, driven drunk, and despite their roles as public servants, the man and woman swear an oath to keep community safe can generally avoid public misconducts that is happening due to them. There were also reports from USA Today that 100 plus officers, uh, more than 1,000 people were more than 1,000 incidents of illegal misconducts were unreported. Then then even there was police violence which occurs in a lot of European countries. Like for example, in Germany, the recent study suggests that there could be incident of violence by law enforcement that official statistic doesn't show. So violence that has been done by the police officers of German is always going unreported and unpunished, according to a research paper that has been published by Bochum University on 14 September 2002. There has been 5 times more cases of police violence than there has been recorded in the whole official statistics. And it is also believed that there is a corruption among the Indian police service, which goes to the top brass. So there has been a lot of reforms that has been made in the police service, but still there has been difficult for honest officer pressurized by powerful local official and suffers punitive transfer and threats while corrupt officer receive promotions. So that is what is happening in a state of in state of India. And an example, there was a transfer of Kiran Bedi for giving a parking ticket to the Prime Minister. There has been a number of officers faced charge in Central Bureau of Investigation case, and there has been a lot of discipline proceedings which was happening in the CBI of India. But still the police officers were not getting demoted or getting punished due to the misconduct that they have done. So after understanding the statistics of the whole misconduct happening in the global manner, we should also understand why police conducts happen. What are the causes of police conduct. So first, when we talk about causes of police conduct, the first thing that comes to our mind is that police doesn't receive adequate training for non-violent situations. So basically what happens is police are not given proper training to deal with violence, and and there has been noted that in the absence of supplementary training, police are likely to be considered violent acceptable. There's also lack of accountability. So basically what happened is a key factor is allowing culture of police brutality to grow. So even if even if a police conducted is police misconduct are done on a in a large manner, still there is no accountability for it. Then there is also a third point for it, that there has been a lot of stress among the police force. So what happened is, stress can be considered a factor in the cause for the police misconduct. So, in this scenario, the law enforcement choose to view the members of the public as hostile, and viewing them as a hostile, they tend up to beat them, in which their stress, they try to cool down their temper, and and then they become unstressful. So the fourth point is, the definition of brutality varies widely. So what do I mean by that? It's a sad truth that our police brutality have found out that the idea of excess force in the eye of beholder is different. And to one officer's reasonable force means the use of soft hand. For others, it might be different. So for different police officers, they have a different definition of brutality. And the fifth point is mostly, the present police force is becoming more militarized. So the local law enforcement officers are equipped with weapons powerful enough to overthrow a small country. So use of heavily armed SWAT teams intervention has spiked up to 50,000 to 80,000 incidents per year. And the sixth point is, there has been the settlements of the brutality or the misconduct done by the police are mostly paid by the taxpayers. So basically what happened is, if an officer is found guilty of the brutality, the victim settlement is typically paid by the city funds. So it results can be, the public is paying for the salary of the officers, and they are also paying for the settlements, and and also a third fee to the police defense fund. So that is what is creating a stress for the city funds as well. Then the last point is, the consequence of for misconducts are minimal. So what do I mean by that? If a police person, if misconducts are done by a police force, the consequences for it are minimal. There is the statistics that shows us that, as in, like, there are reports in US today. There's report by NDTV that most of the police misconducts are unreported, and it just goes away within a blink of time. Then after understanding why police conduct happens, I like myself to explain what are the impacts of police misconducts on the whole society. So what happened is, misconduct among police officers spread like contagious disease. Like, there is a saying, there is not a saying that there is a blue code of silence among the United States police officers. So basically, what happened is, uh, that misconducts by any police officers will not be reported by other police officers who have witnessed it. So 2005 survey have found evidence that that misconducts by any police officers increase the likelihood that the peer officer would also be engaged or encouraged in misconduct. So in addition to the blue code silence, the police conducts can also lead to miscarriage of justice. Sometimes there is a lack of justice among it. Then the second point is, police killing of minorities group may affect the health of the infants born into the community. So what happened is, like scholars, like socialists, like Joshi, Regivith of Harvard University analyzed the birth records of nearly 4 million babies born in California in recent years and found out that the black infants, that is the minority community of USA, that is the blacks, that the black infants born near police killings of unarmed black individually were more likely to be born prematurely and have a lower birth weight. And he didn't find a similar a similar case with the white peoples in the USA. It was only found in the reports of the black infants. So there was also maternal stress related to killing of near dear ones. There is a casual link between police violence and birth outcomes. It was suggested by a new study that which was laid down by Paul Braveman, a professor of family community medicine at the University of California, that chronic stress due to any cause, for example, worry about oneself or one's loved one or just member of one group being the victim of police violence, it triggers the new neurodoctrine mechanism that produce inflammation of the immune system. Uh, these are thought to be important mechanism leading to preterm births. Then there is fatal injuries that increase population-specific mortality rate. So, what do I mean by is that that is not obviously immediate, but results from repeated physical injuries while in public custody can cause deaths. For example, in 2005, Dondi Johnson was arrested for public urination and placed in a police vehicle. Then he entered the police vehicle uh, in a good health. But when he left the police vehicle, he was dying from injuries sustained in the vehicle. So all these cases sum up to us that fatal injuries that occurs during the um, misconducts can cause us death in the future. So then there is adverse physiological response, which increase mobility. So what has police brutality done? It has created emotional effects on individual and communities witnessing or experience harassment. Then there is unroutine or routine unwarranted searches, and that goes unpublished, which sends a message to the minority communities that their bodies are police properties and the police can do anything with it. When faced with such kind of threat, the body, produce hormones and other signals that turns on the systems that are necessarily for survival in the short term. This change includes accelerate heart rates, increase respiratory rates. But when the threats become, persistent, the survival process become dangerous and cause rapid wear and tear on the body organs of the uh, victims of the police misconduct. So sometimes it may lead condition as stroke. Then it may lead to disorders of then it may disorders of cognitive impairment. Then there might be accelerating aging that might happen due to police misconduct. Then there is also due to arrest, legal and medical funeral bills that cause a financial strain to the victim's family. So after police misconducts affects individual and community in such a manner that it tolls on the productive and on their economy as well. So basically what happens, in addition to the job loss, survivors of the brutality may have to deal with disabilities resulting from the police use of excessive forces. Then then there is also police brutality which affects the economic productive of minority communities, because um, loved ones take times away from paid work to grieve, plan, attend funerals of the victims of the death, victims that has been due to the police misconduct. And there has been the last point, which is settlement taken care by taxpayers, which leads to a lot of financial debt for the city's budget. Because for example, in 2015, Eric Garner family settled with New York police, and he was awarded a 5.9 million in a wrongful death suit at the hands of New York City Police Department. So it it was also, there was another example where Christian elements suffer from a bipolar episode at a Midway airport, misconduct done by police officers. And she was paid 22.5 million in a settlement with the city of London. Uh, so after understanding the impacts of police misconduct in the society, we'll try to understand what are the initiative taken by the government to prevent police misconduct. So in the early 90s, US policing were linked to corruption and was controlled by political pressure. So in response to the situation which happened, the leader of modern law enforcement advocate the development of college education programs in political science and standardizing training for police academies in effort to produce professional and educated officers and police chiefs. So what after after having a higher education and officers training, it develops and improves effective communication and analytic skills that can be lethal in the jobs of police. And it also improves the officers thinking and uh, verbal speeches, and also improves uh, ethical values can be developed through them. So that's the reason the leader of modern law enforcement try to focus on training and having a standard education for the police officer, so that the misconducts can be reduced in a larger manner. Then there is a large then there is a rise in media coverage and the civil unrest surrounding allegation of police misconduct and killing. So what happened is, technology plays a crucial role as a major news outlets cover stories of misconducts, uh, that puts pressures on the police officers to restrain the misconducts in a larger manner, and also leads to formation of investigation panel for misconducts occurring in the society. Then in June 2015, New York Police Department responded misconduct by releasing a detailed plan for engaging with neighboring residents to deter crime. So the plan was organized under 5 T's. So it was tactics, technology, training, terrorism, and trust. And it also included the introduction of body cameras to better monitor contacts with citizens. So after seeing the results of the test, the New York Police Department planned to introduce about 1,000 body-worn cameras by 2016, to gain data on how the tools contributed to officer safety, provides evidence for criminal investigation, and improve police community relation. Then there was regular mental health and checking and screening of you know screenings that were done in Metropolitan Police Service. They believe that the mental health of their law enforcement personnel is the most utmost important. So they understand the job itself, that it puts incredible amount of stress pressure on law officers and can create a host of mental health concerns which can have an adverse effect on the judgments, decision making, critical thinking, and the health of the officers. So that's why they started to have regular mental health checking and screening for the officers. Then the United Nations Police Division has taken a lot of number of initiatives to expand and consolidate the role of United Nations police working in the UN peace operation. The international policing is become more multi-dimensional as it re-established the rule of law while providing public safety, security. The UN police are also working on sexual, gender-based violence in a number of post-conflict settings. Then they're also helping to train national police service. Then they're trying to enforce system that address uh, crimes. Then they are also working with Interpol, that is International Police Organization, to consolidate lessons learned and define practice of international policy. Then there is also UN also initiated human rights standards and practice of police. So in that it has made guidance guidelines into for major human rights topics of concern to the police, such as investigation, arrest, detention, and the use of force. So they also include the principal United Nations human rights treaties, and also many specified declaration and bodies of principle on how on law enforcement which can be adopted by United Nations. They have guidelines for police investigation, and they have guidelines for use of force and arms. They have stats of uh, emergency and armed protection of your refugees. Then they have human rights. They have guidelines, human rights of victim. Then they have police command and management, and they have also guided and incorporated police violation of human rights. In the last point, there are also communities which are united against police misconducts, such as, for example, there is anti-terror police project, there is community united for police reform, there is defenders, etc., that was created to deal with police brutality and police misconducts, which are on an ongoing basis. They worked on day-to-day abuses, as well as taking more extreme cases. Their overriding goal is to create a climate of resistance to abuse of authorities by police of organization, and to empower local people with a structure that can take on police brutality and actually bring it to an end. They provide supports for survivors and brutalities and family of victims, so that they can reclaim their dignity and join the struggle to end uh, police brutality. You know, uh, the conclusion that I have after after the results of my research, that I've come to understand that police misconduct is an issue that is greatly impacting the minority communities in different society, as as a whole. I've gone over several different situations of how police mistreats and abuses their power, and that which don't have any consequences. Then the system is all over stacked upon against the whole minority communities, and sometimes it doesn't provide justice for any of the crimes that the police officer commit. The police also have interns, after all this, the minority community doesn't trust the police at all, because police officers targets them even if they are not doing anything wrong. So then even after all, even after doing such kind of misconducts, they are still getting away with murders, and still they're not getting uh, you know they're not getting they're not getting convicted, they're not getting, they're not losing the jobs. So basically what happened is that, it creates a gap between the police and the community. So with all this happening, the gap between is uh, is is growing at such a rapid rate, that it may become unfixable. So, and also there are so many, innocent victims that are falling prey to police misconduct. And, if any, and what my suggestion will be to the, innocent victims, that, they should not be quiet, quiet. As, being quiet is, just be equal to the guilt of the police. So victims should, report it, should fight for the damage done to them. Unless it is not reported, many criminals will be free in the society and hence causes more damage to the society. And I think that police officers need better training that has already been laid down with a lot of law that has been laid down with a lot of policing that is happening in lot of countries, but it has not been implemented as it was suggested. So that is a minus point. And they also need to build a relation with the community, and not just try to tear it apart. So police officers should be held just as responsible as any person in the country for committing a murder or shooting or someone. So basically law should be equal for all. The community needs to have faith in the people who are supposed to uh, be there to protect us. So unless we start this healing process now, it will be too late if we, it will be too late if we don't start it now. Because, the longer that we wait, this will create to never-ending battles of, the police versus the community. So, that is how I conclude by, what we can do is we can, come together and, help police officers responsible for their action, and get some closure with the deaths of innocent people. And also we should have we should have faith in the people who are supposed to be there to protect us. So basically, it's a dual thing. The police needs to be also, police needs to also have faith on us in regarding that, we are responsible for maintaining protocols in the society and vice versa. So that's how I conclude. Thank you. And any questions to be raised by the panel can be answered by me.
Excellent. Natisha has one question for you, and then we have to end the session because we're coming up on the next session. But she has one question for you, and I will let her ask it because she has her video up.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Christopher. Hi, Ankit. That was a really good presentation. I would like, I don't want to make this really controversial, but since with the burning issue that's been happening regarding George Floyd, but in relation with that, also in India, on the 16th of April, we came across an incident in Palghar in the state of Maharashtra, where two Hindu monks were actually pushed by the police officers to get mob lynched by a certain community. And they just stood there and watched these two people getting mob lynched by those set of people. So I understand with the way you were presenting, and you did mention about certain policies that the UN has come up with. And of course, with the fact that communities are also working together to ensure that brutality is not conducted by the police officers. But when you get to ground reality, we know that there are a lot of things that do not work the way they are theoretically. And when it comes to India, we know that since this issue happened on the 16th of April, it's taken almost 2 months right now till present to actually come up to a conclusion where a CBI probe will be taken towards the incident. So what are your views on that, and what are probably the solutions that you would give on a legal aspect as to what the judiciary should do with respect to this, to ensure that justice is given faster, because we know justice delayed is justice denied at the end of the day. So what are your views on that?
I can give you 2 minutes for this, Ankit.
Okay. Thank you so much for your question, Nitisha. Coming to the incident which happened in Maharashtra, obviously uh, there is brutality happening in a lot of parts in the global manner. But you can't judge one incident. You can't just one incident that was happening in India. There are a lot of there is lot of police officers who are honest, um, who are honest, who does justice to the service they provide. Coming back to the coming to your coming back to later part of the questions, where you what are the roles that judiciary can do. Judiciary can prepare a fast track court, where the proceedings of the proceedings of the police misconduct cases can be uh, taken into consideration, and a fast track is done, so that the outcomes and the judgment of the case can come as early as possible, so that justice is given to the victims. So I hope that it satisfies your question.
It does. It does. Thank you so much, Ankit.
Excellent job, Ankit. That was an amazing presentation. That's a really good de-escalation conversation too, because it wasn't deeply involved in emotion. It was deeply involved in fact, and you were presenting those facts excellently, and showing the world that we can have this discussion, and we can have this discussion as adults and really look at what problems we have and how we can fix those problems. And I really want to thank you for that presentation. I don't want to rush the end of this, but we do have to go over and grab the next one. I hope you guys will all join us. It should be an interesting discussion in conflict resolution. So thank you guys very much. Thank everybody for attending, and I look forward to seeing you guys on Friday.